तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहैः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Before we go, I want to start the class because see, asking questions is a very essential part of learning. So we really encourage asking questions and not just taking everything as it is, right? So I liked, from what I understood, I was trying to figure out your questions and correct me if I'm wrong. First I will reiterate the questions and then I will attempt to answer. And Surya is said, let's see if he wants to add something, right? Now I had a feeling that Shubham had two questions. The first question was that from what she had said, that in our childhood we hear the fact that all that is here is Ishvara, okay? And as we progress and as we go through life, then we try to then break it down and we try to understand in detail. See, for example, you look at science and you try to understand that intelligence in detail, right? So that means, let's say you study astrophysics, you study quantum physics, you study whatever biology, you study botany, you study physiology. But what we are doing is we are moving from this general concept of Ishvara being everywhere, that intelligence being everywhere, to have more specific access to that intelligence, right? Now, what she was asking is, what is the value added in going back to that generalized idea and moving away from specific, right? This is what you were saying, right? So then she says that in fact, a lot of understanding takes place in the details. So going back, how does it enhance our knowledge? That was her first question, right?
Yeah.
And the second question she had was that when we were talking about all these different laws, right? And then we say that there is one entity which is all intelligence and all the laws are manifestation of that entity. So she said, why do you need to go back to that one entity? What is the so-called proof? Why can't you just take laws as separate laws? And why do you need one entity which is the center at which all the laws are taken to be the manifestation of? Am I accurate in my understanding?
Yeah, and I think one is the corollary of the first.
Yeah.
The second is the corollary of the first.
Right?
Yeah, fundamentally,
right?
You were talking about Ishvara as being a very major concept that breaks through many understandings and helps us gain a more holistic understanding of the world. And to me, that was going back to a very simplistic idea of universal intelligence that binds the world. I mean, when we were kids, we were told this, you know, that the rock has intelligence and the table has intelligence. I mean, everything is one and is all created by the same God. That was called God then. And then we scientifically broke down the laws and what created, I mean, like I mentioned at some point, the notion of the cell, the idea of the atom was wonderful because it suddenly all made far more sense than the idea of universal intelligence. And so I found it very, I mean, I didn't get the aha out of the idea of Ishvara.
Yeah. See, that Now, just a few things that there are many aspects to this question. I will just say, now one thing, right? The first thing is the topic of Vedanta is not really Ishvara as such. It is moksha is for yourself, right? And in order to, the whole premise is that in order for that moksha, you need to re-understand who you are. Okay? So that means because you think you are this little entity. You are the little entity and you are studying physics and you are studying biology, then you are studying whatever. But your identity as who you are remains this little entity. Right? Even if you, for example, understand Ishvara is everywhere, but you don't really quite know what it means in terms of your relationship with that entity. At the most, you can think that you are just one little part of that very vast entity. Right? That's when our understanding ends. The whole premise of Ishvara, the whole premise of Vedanta is that there is this search for moksha is what? Search for personal freedom. Okay? So what you are really looking for is your own freedom. You are not looking for Ishvara or anything. You are looking for your personal freedom. Okay? Now, you have a conclusion about you being limited individual who looks into the world and discovers many very profound things. Okay? But the identity that I am limited individual remains intact.
Right.
Okay. Now, what Vedanta is doing is making you question that assumption that you are this little entity.
Right.
Okay. And what Vedanta starts with by saying you are Brahman. I am Atma Brahman. Okay. So therefore, you need to understand that I am not this little entity, I am limitlessly big. So there is this whole sophisticated methodology to make you see the fact that you are limitless. Okay? Now, even if you understand that you are limitless, you still have a question, how did this universe come about? Right? Because you didn't create it. Okay? So therefore, there is a discussion of Ishvara. There is a concept of Ishvara, because if you are limitless, limitless cannot be two. When I say limitless, if there are two things, okay, there cannot be limitlessness, because no matter how one thing is big and one is small, right, that very small thing limits the other if it is totally separate from it.
Absolutely.
Okay? So once I say I am limitless, okay, then whatever is the cause of the creation cannot be separate from me.
Yeah.
Right? Because it cannot be. So that's why in that equation, when you are understanding your limitlessness, you also need to resolve the universe into that limitless reality, and you also need to resolve the cause of the universe into that reality. And this is why Vedanta talks about these two things, right? Not in a specific manner, but in terms of its identity with you. And all that is there is one. So the whole purpose of Vedanta is to make you see the reality about yourself. Okay? And if it is true that you are limitless, Vedanta also has to resolve the universe and the cause of the universe into the same reality. Otherwise, it cannot be limitless. So that is the whole sophisticated methodology. Now, let us assume that you just want to understand Ishvara. Right? Let's forget Vedanta. You just want to understand Ishvara in its detail. Okay? Ishvara in its detail, if you take Vedanta as something which is all knowledge, there is no way to fathom all knowledge. It's impossible. So this is why when we come into this world, we look at one given aspect, which is one manifestation of Ishvara. Let's say, okay, now I'm fascinated by how the galaxy operates. Okay? So that means I study astrophysics. Now even that, with all these astrophysics discoveries that we have done, they still don't know how many galaxies are there in the universe. So that means if you want to study Ishvara in detail, you can say now physics has so many different disciplines within physics. You have quantum physics, you have astrophysics, you have quantum mechanics. You have so many different subject matter. You said, okay, I can't fathom all the subject matter because it's too much. I'll take one subject matter. And you study in detail and detail and detail, and the more you know, the more you find out how much you don't know.
Sure.
So therefore, if this is the way you approach Ishvara, you will never get it. Because you get one specific thing, and within that so much you don't know. And within then you know little more, and then you don't know so much. Right? So that is a valid search. We are not saying that this is not valid. What we are saying is that in that direction there is no end. Because neither you can know everything, and even if you take one given thing, you can't know everything.
Yeah.
Right? So same thing, you can say, okay, now I can't know the entire universe, so I want to know only what? The human body. Even after years and years of research, you don't understand totally the human body. Okay? Then you said, okay, now I want to only concentrate on one organ, which is eye. The eye, physical eye. That also you cannot totally understand. So ophthalmologist, then there is a retinologist, then there are all specialization within specialization, and then you study more of that, and then you still don't know much. I mean, you know a lot, but you still don't know many things. Okay? So this way, it's a valid search, but in this direction there is no end, and you remain just one entity. And you're catching one aspect of Ishvara's all knowledge, but your capacity to unveil the knowledge is always limited. No matter how much you discover, your understanding is still limited of even that little subject matter, let alone everything else. Okay? So therefore, this way is a valid way, but this is not the end of, this is not something which will lead to the answer that you are searching for, which is who are you and what is your relationship with Ishvara. So the approach is a little bit different, because even though that is a valid search, as Neeru was saying, right, that anything actually you are discovering, any knowledge, it is just one aspect of Ishvara that you are looking into. Okay? But because you are not all knowledge, you can't capture every aspect of even that given thing. So that means you're free to do it, and it's a very beautiful search. You're studying physics, you're studying mathematics, you're studying any biology, you're studying psychology, you're actually in touch with Ishvara, that given aspect of Ishvara. You're not away from Ishvara. You're studying that all intelligence from that given standpoint. Okay. So that is something. Now the other question is, now why can't you just take that all these different laws are just independent laws and doing their job? Why do you need a central entity called all knowledge, which is the manifestation of all laws? That is your second question, right? Now this question is very, one way that Neeru answered, I liked it, but I have something else to say. I will reiterate what Neeru said. Correct me if I did not understand. Okay. So now what Neeru said is something very interesting. She said, look at the physical body. Okay? And you have laws of physics working here, you have laws of biology working here, you have all the chemical balances, you have all of psychology, you have all the laws working in one little entity, and they are all coordinated. They are not just working independently or whatever. Each one is totally well intricated in order to make one little entity in the creation which is so complete. Then you have another body which is so complete, the third body which is so complete. But not only that, within this body everything is perfectly interconnected. They are not just all laws working independently with no coordination. Each entity has a coordination, and between you and me there are forces which are also coordinated. Okay? So therefore there is this one design which coordinates all these laws. Otherwise they would all just be doing their own job. So this is a very nice way of answering. I thought that was a nice way of answering. Right? Now the other thing that I want to add is, when you say that there are all these different laws which are operating in the universe, right? That means that there is a time and space framework within which all these different laws are operating, right? When you have many different laws, it means that there is a time and space framework. Now, when we are asking about Ishvara, any plurality, whether it is in terms of laws or in terms of entities, it means that there is time and space framework. Without time and space, there is no plurality, right? Now, we are talking about how did time and space itself come about. Because Ishvara, the cause of the universe, means it has to precede time and space. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, what you are saying is that all these laws exist within time and space. Right? Now, Ishvara has to precede time and space. Okay? Now, before time and space comes, any plurality exists only in time and space, by definition. Okay?
Yeah.
So, if there is an entity which is Ishvara, it has to be only one. It cannot be many. Many means there is already time and space. Okay? So, therefore, before time and space comes about, there is a one entity. Okay? You can't have many. Many is only in time and space. So therefore, what we are talking about is this intelligence from which what? Time and space comes, and within time and space all the entities come, and all the laws come which govern the interactions of different entities. This is why, in fact, for Ishvara, if you take Ishvara as the cause of the universe, which is the cause, universe is defined as time-space object framework. So if you talk about the cause of the universe, you cannot have many. Logically, it does not hold. Okay? Now there is another possibility that there is no cause of the universe. That also is logically not possible, because from nothing, everything cannot come. Okay? So therefore, there can only be one. You can't have any if you postulate anything else, somewhere along the line, it logically falls apart. So there is no way to contradict what Vedanta says. Okay? When you say, that's why the scientists are talking about Big Bang and what was before that. They cannot say there was nothing, because from nothing everything cannot come. Okay? And they can't say there were many things, because time and space, many things can only exist within time and space framework. So there has to be something. So what we say is, there is this all knowledge and all intelligence in a potential form. This is what we call Maya. And then, in fact, it goes perfectly with Big Bang, because what we say is that Maya has a Vikshepa Shakti. It just projects as the universe as many. And therefore, anything you look at, initially you think it's a form. When you begin to inquire into it, it just collapses into atoms and particles, and then that intelligence which manifests those atoms and particles and what arranges them in different permutations and combinations to create the Jagat. So that is the only possible, explanation for which actually the scientists don't have an answer. This is why they come and they listen to Vedanta.
But when the scientists don't have an answer,
yes,
and when we are not able to put our finger on what created the universe, I accept that it has to be something that transcended time and space. We give it a name called God.
Ishvara. But we explain. We explain what it is. We don't just give it a name and say, oh, there is some... See,
but the name,
yeah.
but what we're explaining it to be
Yes.
is only all knowledge, all intelligence.
Yes. And that is what you see when you... See, one thing is to just blindly say, oh, Ishwar sab mein hai, but you don't know how. Here what we are doing is we are making you see that this Jagat is mithya. It has a dependent reality. There are forms within forms within forms
Yeah,
within
which is
forms.
very clear.
And then there are forms which are not just forms, they are all arranged in a perfectly intelligent. So that intelligence is Ishvara. right? Now, but we are not, that is not the final thing that Vedanta wants to convey. What Vedanta wants to convey is what is your relationship with that Ishvara.
Right.
Right? And that is where and you are not just this little entity looking at this vast intelligence which is Ishvara. The equation is totally different. The equation is Tat Tvam Asi. Okay? You are that. There is one point where there is a complete identity, and that is what Vedanta is pointing out. So, this is what and there is no way to contradict. This is why when people listen to it, they find you try to postulate something else and you will always fall into some kind of a logical error and you get stuck somewhere. But here there is no point where you get stuck. This is the beauty of Vedanta. This is why people are fascinated by Vedanta. Scientists listen to it and they are fascinated by Vedanta. You want to add something, Surya?
Yeah, very briefly. One is that when we say Tattvamasi, you are that. There are two levels. Vinod has spoken about that. There is the Vachyartha, which is the literal meaning, or the immediate meaning of the words. So you, as an individual, like seems to be enclosed here, limited in space-time and so on. And that, which is the cause of the universe. Okay? So, if I can say like that, these scientists have a small, let's say, vision of what is this Tat at the literal level. They are looking into it and they are trying to make sense of what is this cause of the universe. Okay? Through all these different disciplines. What is interesting is that they have not reached that, but all the efforts, for example, in the physical world, I'm just speaking of the physical world, physics, which is supposed to be the most fundamental science. There also, there is a kind of attempt to reach a theory of everything, unifying different kind of forces at different levels that you are familiar with, right? Okay. So they are going towards that.
Yeah. Things like the God particle and...
No, God particle is a minuscule aspect of that. It has nothing to do. It's different forces. At the level of the nucleus and the atom, there is this weak nuclear force, there is the strong nuclear force, then there is the magnetic, electromagnetic force, and there is this gravity force.
Sure.
Okay? So now they are looking at the theory, which now they are unable to make a sense of how all this operate as a whole.
Right.
Okay?
How does it all stay together?
But their efforts are toward that. So the premise of even this physicist is that it's not isolated. The reality has to be integrated into one whole. And at the physical level only they are operating. We are operating much more. We are embracing all the different domains. Okay? So this is one. Just to substantiate the fact that even the physicist wants to have the insight that there is one thing only. And they want to crack that. Now, other efforts which are done in the domain of science is previously, 20 years ago, you speak about psychology, the way it is taught in the universities, and the training of the psychologists was purely this Freudian model and all this, and then so many different schools of psychology. See how the behavior, they were a little bit ignoring the emotion, but looking at all these different unconscious, so many different models. Now, if you go into psychology, you cannot link it with biology. You cannot link it also with what is called neurosciences. Okay? So here also, there is a kind of insight that we are getting, is that there is a convergence and there is a possibility that all these different levels that we have kept aside, in fact, are working all together.
Yeah.
Okay? So that is another kind of insight that they give and which supports what we are saying, that the whole thing is one. Okay? So this is one remark I wanted to do. The second remark is that what Nima said, our attempt is not to look into Tattvamasi, just this Ishvara for the sake of looking into Ishvara. It's not the purpose.
Just to find out our relationship.
Not our relationship, our identity with Ishvara.
Yeah.
How is it possible? And in that lies our freedom.
Right. Sure.
Right?
Oh, sorry, that's mine. Next.
So that is the second thing. That Nima already explains, so I will not go more into that.
Yeah.
But a small note on this, which is on, I'm sure Nima has spoken about that, this idea of means of knowledge. This is a very different also approach, is that all the approach of all sciences are using only what? Perception and different forms of reasoning. Right?
Yeah.
In order to remove my ignorance of the universe, of the world, of things, what are the means of knowledge I have at my disposal? It's only these five senses.
Yeah.
And plus, there are different forms of reasoning I can use. Induction, inference, and multi-step induction, and so on. And just you can, using these very powerful means, send some amazing things to the moon and to visit very far away in the galaxy. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay?
Sure.
But if you stick with that, you have an inherent limitation, what Nima was saying, is that you will never be able to look at your own nature. But even what the psychologists or the neuroscientists are doing, it is about something that can be objectified. It is not about the person, the nature of the knower. The knower is using a means of knowledge to know things which are different from him or her. Whether it is neurons, how they work, or it is this table, or it is a galaxy, it's something which is distinct from me.
Yeah.
Okay? So you will never get, this is another very important thing, very fundamentally in the approach of science, you will never go to the truth of the knower. What is the reality of the knower? You will only go to what is the reality of the brain, or reality of the neurons, or reality of the cells, but it's not you. That is not you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that is very important. So another small note that we can have is that this idea of Ishvara is not just these laws, which are laws, or
Laws.
this physical,
Okay.
biological. It's not just that. Don't think it's only that Ishvara.
Okay.
It is not only what we call nimitta karana, which are all these laws, but it is also upadana karana. So there also we differ totally from scientific approach. What is upadana karana? We are saying that this also is Ishvara. It's not the laws which make the atoms and the nucleus get together and assemble together. We say also that the atom itself, the nucleus itself, all the elements which so-called seems to be so tangible, that also is Ishvara. That no scientist will say. So this is very fundamentally different from the approach of science.
So it's not just the laws that bind,
Yes.
but it's also the matter
Yeah,
of the
Exactly.
universe that
The
is
mat-
Ishvara.
See, when Nima is looking at this form within form within form within form, so you look at something, there is a word, okay, word table. Then you go to metal, let's say steel. Then you have this atom.
Yeah.
So you have a word, then you end up with so many different words. Then again so many different words. Again so many different words. Okay? But where is the entity for which you are using all these words? Where is it? There is no entity really speaking. And the words point out, and that you can see that there is only knowledge. So when we say that Ishvara is all knowledge, doesn't mean it's just all laws which connect so-called tangible entities. This is what science is saying.
It is also the tangible entity.
Exactly. So that is totally different. It's a totally different ballgame. Huh? That we are not saying. They have some idea because this quantum physics is pointing out of the absence of tangibility of
That's
objects.
right.
Okay? But they are not going into that. But when we tell that, then they will say, wow, yes, it makes sense. Okay? Because they cannot have access to that. They cannot have access to that. The fact, or when Vedanta speaks about the nature of Ishvara, it is not available to our usual means of knowledge. It is not available to perception and inference. It has to be brought by a means of knowledge, which are the words of tradition. Reasoning will only take you to some point where you have some insights, you have different laws, it seems to be unified, and there are some supporting logic for that. But that's all. It will not lead you further. You see?
I have to leave soon.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, see you in 2 weeks. I'll try see if I can come on the 26th. I don't know what time my flight is. Okay. But I'll try and come otherwise to the 13th. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to Japan next week.
Oh, nice. Very good.
2 weeks, so.
See you.
Bye.
That's it.
Bye. I just
No, it's a shoulder. It's sync.
Huh?
Yeah, then yeah. Oh.
to the next verse, which says, Yatyat vibhuti mat sarvam Srimaturjitameva va Tattadeva vagachatvam Mama tejomsha sambhavam. Okay, so you chant after me. You're chanting. Oh, but you
Carry on.
Okay, now you don't have the text. Okay, so here, then basically, again there is a little discussion on what is Ishvara. And Ishvara, as he says, Yatyat Vibhuti Mat Sarvam, wherever there is anything which is what? Something exalted, this is what he says, that Srimadur Jitamevava Tat Tat Eva Avagacha. May you understand that to be Mama Tejo Amsha Sambhava. Okay? It is one of the manifestation of what I am. Okay? So that means that generally your understanding of the world is that, okay, now there is a beauty, there is a sunset. Okay? So that means your understanding of it remains as that there is a sunset, there is a sun, which is beautiful, and this is something which is visually very pleasing to you. Okay? And mountains, you see, it inspires you. Rivers, you see, it inspires you. A goodness in some human being, you see, it inspires you. So there are so many different points in the creation that you get what? Inspired by. And you think of it as what? All separate. What Lord Krishna is saying is, everything is something which is my manifestation. So that means, as Surya says, that not only the laws are manifestation of Ishvara, any object which is also nothing but manifestation of Ishvara. So in your understanding of Ishvara, if you exclude anything, okay, or if you exclude yourself, it is not a complete understanding of Ishvara. Okay. So therefore, I cannot, if I think that I understand, so and this is where the whole Vedic culture comes in. Okay. Everybody is inspired by sunset. Everybody loves to look at the ocean because it reminds them of the vastness. Everybody likes to be near a water body and be near the river and all that. But very few people, what, do this. This is the difference. Because you don't only see that given object, you see something more behind it, and that is one entity which is Ishvara. Okay? So that means Vedic culture, you look at the tree and you can be very inspired and you can be very intrigued by the tree. But here, the Vedic culture is what? Even on the tree they put all these, what? This strings. You know, they put the strings. In the water they will put flower. In the ocean they will offer flower. To the sun they do this. So that means you are living the understanding that there is divinity everywhere. Okay? Now if this is really understood, that all that is here is one divinity, you cannot have this sense of isolation. It cannot coexist. Okay? Because otherwise you are just paying a lip service to this fact that oh, all that is here is Ishvara. It has not been integrated in your thought process. Okay? If you understand that there is one entity and I am very much part of that manifestation, and every beauty that is there is part of that one entity, you live in awe of. You know, you cannot be depressed in this universe. There is so much things that are happening right now. There is a Western psychologist, and the Westerns, and David Rico or somebody, he says why in this modern civilization there is such a big problem of what? Depression and isolation. Okay? And they said because you think that you are living in a dead universe. Okay? That means the forces are all just mechanical forces. The objects are dead. Right? And he says that in fact there is so much happening at an intricate level to make everything what it is. If you begin to see that, you will always be in awe. How these little things are working. And you begin to see that and you say, my God, what amount of intent, it's unfathomable. Okay? So that means it's a very deep shift in psyche. It's not a small thing. It's not just like saying, yeah, everything is Ishvara. It's a change in the way I look at things. And the minute I begin to see how from the smallest atom to this biggest galaxy, how much intelligence there is, right? In the way things are organized, and how in my body itself there is so incredible amount of intelligence, okay? Then you will be always in awe of things, and you will look at things with reverence rather than dissatisfaction. So that means that understanding of Ishvara as everything, it shifts the psyche at a very deep level from isolation to connection. Okay? And from dissatisfaction to gratitude. This is a tangible effect of seeing Ishvara everywhere. Because if that translation doesn't take place, you can say how much ever you say that is Ishvara, but you are not touched by it. The minute you are touched by this understanding, this is what we call transformation. And this is why they say Vedanta is a philosophy, but it is also a spiritual pursuit. Okay? It's a philosophy because you want to understand the nature of reality. You want to understand who you are, what is the nature of the cause. You want to understand the nature of the universe. So there is this whole inquiry-based approach. But it is not just like a scientist who is looking at the universe and trying to find out the truth, and you remain untouched. This is why you can have scientists who are totally brilliant, right? But emotionally, they are what? At times, they can be totally immature or totally sometimes not have any congenial kind of a person relationships. They are in their own world. Okay? Vedanta is a spiritual pursuit because what implication this shift in vision has on me and how I interact with the universe. Okay? It has to change you as a person. If you really understand that everything is manifestation of one reality, you cannot continue to be what? Only just grabbing. It is not possible. So that means that this knowledge is not well integrated. You know how it happens in one corner of your brain you understand one thing and the other corner of the brain continues according to the past habits, and the past habits have past assumptions and which are completely contradictory to this new understanding. So in order for Vedanta to work, you need to integrate all the past ways have to be re-examined in light of this vision. Okay? And all the problems that we carry within our psyche, anger, frustration, sadness, fears, they are all based on our previous understanding of the universe, where I am one little entity which is different from everything. Okay? Now if I really understand what Vedanta is saying, then I have to revisit all the things which are lying in my psyche and correct them according to my new understanding. Because if that process is not complete, I will be like in a split. When I come to Vedanta class, logically I can kind of follow the arguments and I can say, okay, now this is this. But the minute I walk out and I have to interact with the world and I come across situations, my brain, which has what? Assimilated years of experience and what? Based on those experiences, certain implicit assumptions of my being a victim, world being not fair, I'm being incomplete or inadequate or lack. It will continue to rule my psyche. Okay? So to bridge this gap is what we call spiritual pursuit. What you understand, it has to translate into what? Your behaviors. And it has to translate into, when situations arise, you have to look upon it, look at those situations differently. Okay? And this is the whole, that's why it takes time. Because until that process is over, okay, there is always kind of a struggle between what prevails. Whether my new understanding prevails or my past habitual thinking prevails.
But when you're going through a difficult time,
Yes.
Whether it's emotional, whether it's
Yes.
the loss of somebody,
Yes.
how does the understanding of one's connectedness to the universe help you deal with something as personal and, you won't feel my loss like I will feel my loss.
That's
The
right.
universe doesn't. I feel my loss.
Absolutely.
But so how does that help me?
That helps me tremendously because that loss, let's say, that has happened, we are not saying that one should have no emotions. Even that is something which is against the laws of the universe. Right? You have to understand, you have to validate your emotions. If you fight your emotions, you haven't understood Vedanta.
Yeah.
Okay? So that means if there is a loss, okay, you can't feel happy. This is the law. Okay? The corresponding emotion to a loss is sadness. When you understand that, there is a cause and effect relationship. There is a cause, which is that external loss, and there is an effect, which is your emotion.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, what are you going to do with this emotion? That is where Vedanta walks in. You have emotion, you don't have to resist it, but you have a choice. Either to let that emotion totally rule you to the extent that you become dysfunctional, or you can express that emotion, grieve it out, and what? Use your free will to slowly help yourself to move on.